Well, hello there. I'm Fitshortie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And usually we touch here on deep matters like, what to eat for breakfast or, what kind of poop you get on a fruitarian diet. But today I'm going to answer this really shallow question, and that is how to take good Instagram photos. You see, I've been an Instagrammer long before I was a YouTuber. This is the point where you check out my Instagram, by the way. It's at fit_shorty_eats on Instagram. Of course, where else, right? Anyway, I get a lot of questions like, what kind of camera do you use, or what kind of apps do you use to edit your photos? And the brutal truth is I don't have a camera, I don't have a laptop, and I don't use any apps to edit my photos, right? I'm a total minimalist. I don't even have a phone. In fact, I take all my photos with an iPad mini, and that is the only equipment I have. So today I want to give you 10 top tips how to take good photos without any specialty equipment. How to take good photos basically with any phone, right? Okay, so getting right into it. Number one, this is my number one tip. Only daytime photos. Good photos means you're taking them with your normal sunlight. That means you don't take nighttime photos. Nighttime photos are a disaster. And you don't take photos with artificial lighting. So in the winter, you don't take your photos inside with a lamp. That's always gonna be a disaster. Tip number 2 is specialty hours. Did you know that there's a special time, like the optimal time, to take a photo of everything? And I'm going to give you just 3 examples of the things that I photograph. For example, food. Whatever you're photographing, whether it's fruit or oatmeal or whatever, the best light to photograph it is in the morning, like 8 or 9 o'clock. If you're photographing the beach, you want the sun to be at right angle to the water so that there's no reflection and the deep turquoise of the water is at its most blue. And that's midday. So if you're photographing a beach, midday or 11 a.m. is your hour. And if you're taking a selfie, and we all know those days where, we've been trying to take a selfie and you look crap the whole day. The best hour is also called the golden hour, and that's 1 hour before sunset. People have known these things for a long time. For example, prostitutes 150 years ago in France, the older ones, when they kind of get middle-aged, they will only walk the streets an hour before sunset because they knew that's when they look their best. Okay, moving on to number 3, that is, I did say daytime photos, but it's essential that you take your photo in the shadow. Bright sunlight and the deep contrast between the light and the dark will never give you a good photo. You want everything that's in the square space to be completely in shadow. So good light, good dispersed light or shadow. That doesn't apply on a cloudy day. On a cloudy day you can take your photos anywhere because there's no deep contrast between shadow and light. But if you're in the tropics, it's essential to take your photos in the shadow. Okay, next one. And as tip number 4, and that's going to be a debatable one, I say no filter. Don't use any filters or any apps to edit your photos. Why is that? That is because when you use a filter, your photos start looking all the same. You become boring and predictable, right? Also, what a filter does is that the picture kind of loses its sharpness, right? It all looks the same. You have the same color scheme going on all the time. And I know a lot of fashion bloggers do that, but I think food pictures, if any, they really do not benefit from filters. We want the food to look juicy and have its natural colors. So for me, no filters whatsoever. Point number 5, what do I use though? And that is on the Instagram app. When you go and edit the photo, you have a lot of things like sharpness, blur, shadow, blah, blah, blah. And then you have these 2, which I find particularly useful. One is brightness. And I like to, especially on my food photos, right? But sometimes also on landscape, all people. I like to scale up the brightness so the picture is a little bit lighter than darker. And the other one I use is saturation, which adds the intensity of color. So, you know, whatever is green looks more green, whatever is red, more red. So the only two edits I use ever are brightness and saturation. Okay, moving on to tip number 6, and that is background. And trust me, if you're a food blogger, it's all about background. I remember reading this interview with like a #1 vegan food blogger in Poland, which was not me, right? Back in the days. And she said she actually has an obsession for collecting these panels of old wood and old tiles that she photographs the food on top of, right? And then she had this whole garage full of pallets of old wood. And I totally get her. I'm all about the background. And here's the 2 secret backgrounds that have really worked for me. One is cement, like, you know, light gray cement is a great background for photographing fruits, or even better, if you happen to have dark gray or light gray wood, that's also, both backgrounds are gray and they seem to really bring out the colors in the fruits. And if you're photographing people, I suggest greenery. You're never gonna look as fresh and vibrant as on the backdrop of greenery, which, by the way, is what I was trying to do today, but you know, it's raining cats and dogs in Belgium today, so none of that. Okay, it's not about the background, it's actually also about the subject matter. So what to photograph is the question. And from the old days, when we were back in the jungle, the human brain was trained to recognize 2 things back in the jungle. One was food, which was essentially fruit, and the second one was other people, whether to mate with them or run away from them, right? So to this day, the 2 things that will attract attention is fruit and faces. So, you know, your Instagram feed with a lot of fruit, nothing looks as good as fruit. People ask me, how can you take such good photos? Well, all I photograph mainly is fruit. Nothing looks to the human eye as good as fruit because we're natural frugivores. And the second thing is a beautiful face. And everybody's face is beautiful. So don't make sure your feed is not entirely just food, right? You want, you know, food and faces and stuff like that. There's other things that also look good. One of them is baby faces. We're naturally attracted to baby faces. If you don't have a baby, just get a younger boyfriend, like I did. If you don't have a younger boyfriend, cats or dogs. They are so photogenic. Don't have a cat or dog, don't worry about it. There's other things that look really good in picture. And for example, restaurant food, flowers, beaches, you get the idea. Okay. Now, I want to talk about something a little bit more technical. You see, I went to art university, so theoretically I have been, schooled about these things, but not really. Nothing taught me like, taking 3,000 photos for Instagram. And that is the angle at which you take your photo. I encourage you to experiment a little bit with the angle at which you take the photo. For me, food photos, the best food photos, and this is a #1 tip I took from a New York restaurant blogger. She said, take all your food photos from above and wait till all the restaurant food has arrived. You have this, huge amounts of food and you're just above it. This is why you will often see Instagrammers standing on tables or chairs in restaurants, which is pretty awkward, right? But I've done it too. I've stood on chairs and tables in restaurants just to get that good pic. So for me, 90% of the photos are straight, above the food. However, if you have something that's the size of a pyramid, like you have this huge stash of fruit, or you're photographing a hamburger, that's really stacked up. If you imagine taking a photo of that hamburger from above, it would be nothing. It would just be a bun and you wouldn't see it, right? So make some exceptions. If something is really piled up, then you may want a side view. Okay, tip number 9 is also going to be a technical one, and that is composition. Basically, what I mean by composition is, first thing to do, make sure that wherever the horizon line is behind you is horizontal. So you don't want your picture to be lopsided. But more importantly, you don't want any rubbish. And I don't mean rubbish, I want visual rubbish in the picture. So what do I mean by visual rubbish? First of all, plastic. Plastic is bad for the planet, but it also looks really bad in pictures. So you don't want any plastic. You don't want any advertisements. You don't want any plastic labels on the fruit. If you're taking a picture of, some beautiful greenery, you don't want a bit of, blue roofing going into the picture, right? So make sure your pictures look as natural as possible. No visual rubbish. Which brings me to my last tip, and you're gonna laugh at this one, but this is honestly like the best photo taking tip I've ever learned from anybody, and that is clean your lens. And I mean it. I've taken so many pictures and wondered why the fuck are they blurry, right? So before you take any pictures or before you film anything, and yes, I cleaned it before I filmed this, you take a cloth, a dry cloth, preferably something that hasn't been in a sandstorm, right? So not a piece of cloth that, it's littered with particles of sand, just a clean piece of cloth. And you gently wipe your lens, because nobody wants blurry photos. Ain't nobody got time for this shit. Okay, I think I managed to wrap it up real quick. I really enjoyed making this video. Hope you enjoyed watching it. Subscribe for more. Ciao! Hey! Well, hello there.